Wonderful turnout we've got. Okay. And Virginia, I'm assuming you'll just keep letting people in as they arrive. Awesome. Well, we had a terrific pre-registration, and it looks like we're getting a great number of folks who are actually here to hear our wonderful readers. So, welcome everyone to the 2023 Rhino virtual launch. Hooray! Thank you. Every year, Rhino has, probably since its beginning, 40 something years ago, every year, we've done an in-person launch in Evanston, Illinois, and it is such a love fest that we wanted to bring it to everyone everywhere. And as we honed our skills at virtual events during the lockdown, we realized we did not need to give up the virtual space. And so thank you all for being here and for proving that poetry really does belong everywhere. And we have a wonderful lineup today. I can't wait to hear their words, but we do have a few opening remarks to share. So first and most importantly, I want to thank everyone for being here. Your attendance supports Rhino and helps create this special feeling of community that Rhino is known for. In the wild, a community of rhinos is called a crash. And so now you're part of the crash. Special thanks to our subscribers, our donors, and our funders, which include the Driehaus Foundation, the Poetry Foundation, Poets and Writers, Inc., and the Illinois Arts Council. Also, please, I also want to note that we are recording the event in case you just joined us. So that's happening. I want to say, friends, we are an all-volunteer organization. We absolutely could not do this without your support. Whether it's a generous grant from one of the funding organizations I mentioned, or just a $5 donation from a poetry lover who knows us, everything matters to us. Thank you. I'm Jan Bottiglieri. I've been a Rhino editor for like 20 years, and I'll be one of our introducers today, along with my fellow Rhino editor, Nile Lansana. Say hi, Nile.
What's good, y'all? What's up, everybody? How we feeling?
Can I get a quick shout out and away from any other Rhino editors here today? I saw a couple. There's Ralph. I see Anne. I don't know who else is out there, but I love you guys. Thanks for being here. A few notes to help us enjoy this amazing event, which we have such an awesome turnout. I love it. So first, please stay muted. Unless you are a reader whose turn it is, keep that mic off. But poetry begs engagement. So please feel free to use the chat function. You see a lot of folks already doing that. It's a great way to engage with fellow attendees, to send a little love to our readers if you particularly love what you're hearing. Also, we'll post a few updates and links in the chat as we go. If you'd like to applaud the readers, you can do that using emojis, or you can use the ASL sign for applause, which we do a lot during our virtual meetings, which is this. And it creates a nice visual when the reader can look out and see all those beautiful hands in the air, like they really do care. If you do not already have a Rhino, like this, today you can take advantage of free domestic shipping as if this were a real in-person launch event. Rhinos make great gifts. If you're an instructor, we can also hook you up with classroom sets. You're just going to have to drop us a note on that one. But keep that in mind if you're an instructor and you want to share contemporary poetry with your classes. So yeah, free domestic shipping today. Also, great news. We are now open for Founders Prize submissions. We've worked to keep our submission costs low. Much of that fee, it goes right back to your fellow poets in the form of an honorarium for our guest judge and in prizes to the winning poets. We would love to read your work. Submissions are open until we reach our monthly cap. Once we reach our August cap, we'll open those submissions up again on September 1st. So this year's guest judge is Rodney Gomez. He's terrific. I see that Virginia just put a link to some of Rodney's information in the chat. So thank you for that. And finally, I'd like to read Rhino's land use statement. We are virtually gathered in Evanston, Illinois, and in the greater Chicago area. The land we're on belongs to and was stolen from the Council of Three Fires, the Odawa, Potawatomi, and Ojibwe nations. Many other tribes called this land home, among them the Peoria, the Miamia, the Kickapoo, the Ochetishiakoween, and the Hoosick. Members of these communities continue to contribute to the life of this city and to the life of poetry. So once again, here's our baby. We are really in love with Rhino 2023 and the work we are honored to showcase and the work that our invited readers are here to share with you today. As always, it's been a labor of love for us. Thank you all for your support. Okay, Nile, let's go.
Thank you so much, Jan. I'm so happy to be here with y'all. I again want to echo Jan's sentiments of saying that we're just happy to have y'all with us and that we want to see y'all in the chat, like give and show the love and the energy like we would all be in the same room physically. Put that in the chat. Let the poets know how you feel about the work, pour the line, show some love. Like that's what we're here to do. And I'm excited to kick things off with our first reader, Jasmine Elizabeth Smith. And one of the things that we like to do with our Rhino launch parties is that we like to make the intros a little more specific. Like y'all could go on their websites or on, our friend Google and like look at their bios. And I definitely encourage you to do that. But we're gonna make our intros a little more specific. So Jasmine Elizabeth Smith, she, her, is a Black poet from Oklahoma City, Chicago. She received her MFA in poetry from the University of California in Riverside. She's a Cave Canem Fellow and a recipient of the Gluck's Art Fellowship. And this poem that's in our issue of Rhino that I have with me right now, my screen's a little blurry, so I don't know if you can see it, but it's on page 146. And what struck me most about this piece was how well it uses like spacing and caesuras to like accentuate the impact of some of the language. And the poem, like from the title, when Jasmine reads it, y'all gonna feel it, but immediately grabbed me from the title. And this poem is dedicated to Jalen Walker, who's a young Black man who was killed in Akron, Ohio by police officers last year. And Jalen Walker was the same age that I currently am when he was murdered. And so this piece like very much stuck out to me, not only in terms of its impact, but also in its creativity and its uplifting of Jalen's humanity. And I felt like that was a wonderful way to start this reading off and start this launch party off. So let's give it up for Jasmine Elizabeth Smith.
Hey, thank you, Niles, for that beautiful introduction, and to Virginia Bell and Jen and the Rhino editorial team for the curation of this event and this fantastic issue. If you don't have it, pick it up. And also to my fellow readers that are reading alongside me, and to you, my audience, there are powers in our numbers. So my name is Jasmine, and I currently reside in the occupied lands of Duwamish in South Seattle. The poems I'm reading today are from my collection in progress, Love How to Be a Black Cowboy. And it's inspired by my own migration from Oklahoma to Southern California and now in Seattle, and my desire to dismantle, expand, and subvert this weird fever dream that is the mythology that surrounds the American West, while also interrogating and forging new realities around my own mythology as a Black woman in America. So let's get started. And it ain't every shut eye asleep on how to become a Black cowboy, part 1. House shoes peeled back like Pentecostal tongues clap midnight liturgies from deadbolts, window latch switch to floodlights, even though the only trespass they catch are cut moths cutting up the air. Baby, you've got to sleep with one eye open. My mama's panic phone calls got me fucked up at night. The wounds of our pupils, siphons, narrow drain catches, clogging the throats of sinks with the softest parts of ourselves. Brushes of baby hair, the tan lines of wedding rings, and everyone and everything that we hold. Enemy at arm's length. A weighted blanket can be both a comfort or a weapon holding you down when you ain't ever been held right by the rest of the world. Shut eye ain't ever sleep, and so we don't ever dream. Jackrabbits born above ground, eyes open, eye spots of mustard green, cowboys, the wild, they must break. 2. Growing up, my mama rarely slept, and I don't know if I can call her courage or craziness. The hunting knife wedged like closure under mattress. I once found an empty gun case under a pillow in place of where a 7-year-old's tooth should have been left. What is this impulse to let in a stranger who picks a lifetime of bones stretched from the sleeping mouths of girls? If Jacob, upon laying his head upon a stone, dream manifests of angels ascending a ladder, what vision is inspired by this collapsed shape of my mother's fear? I often wonder why women are the biggest consumers of true crime. Call me an idealist, but I cannot watch another body turn beyond recognition, somewhere as easily as recognizable as this. How easily it could be my own hair threshed in a back seat, my nail dislodged from bed, crosshairs of caution, tape. There are 100 ways to die as a woman, according to my mother, who recalls the synopsis of each episode in season 6 of 72 Hours and reminds me to check the locks. The best place to lay down is somewhere doors are in plain sight. And to this day, I find it impossible to keep the blinds open and undress eclipsed in a dark house. I've become accustomed to experiencing touch through the osmosis of my eyes and ears. I want to know what is out there. Do you know what I mean? If an unknown man approaches you in a car, walk quickly in the opposite direction. And when cars approach this cul-de-sac, I find myself running back and forth into circles. Speculative fiction. On January 6, 2021, when pro-Trump rioters attempted to swarm Capitol Hill, impeding the democratic process of certifying the 2020 presidential electoral votes, National Guard officers immediately stood armed and ready. Those who obstructed justice were arrested on Class D felony charges punishable up to 26 years in prison. When referring to violence, mainstream media outlets refer to insurrectionists as white supremacists. domestic terrorists, thugs. In suburbs of Harrison, Arkansas, Yucaipa, California, mothers covered their faces with coffee grinds and lowered their blinds in shame. On October 1st, 2019, Botham Jean finishes a bowl of vanilla ice cream. While watching television, he contemplates eating a second, but instead just brushes his teeth and goes to bed. When the Amistad sails from Havana, Cuba to Newport, Rhode Island, Singapore and his crew are celebrated. Mendez wrote explorers, botanists, translators, naturalists chartered by Sierra Leone to establish complex trade routes between West Africa and indigenous populations of the Caribbeans. And 2018, Stacey Abram wins Georgia's statewide elections, and she is elected as the state's first Black governor. When 14-year-old Emmett Till purchases 2 cents of bubblegum from Bryant's Grocery and Meat Market, Caroline Bryant recognizes what she first mistakes as a sound of a whistle as a boy's lips as he turns to say goodbye. And there is no white guilt, no tender sorrow, no memoir to be released by the Southern Historical Collection in 2036, no late blooming regret for Mammy Till after the death of one of her sons. The Justice for Victims of Lynching Bill classified lynching, defined as a bodily, emotional, or financial injury on the basis of perceived race, color, religion, nationality, as a federal hate crime, was passed unanimously by Congress in 1900. This land has never been utilized as a weapon, nor the weight of our bodies forced upon it. Our mothers who raised us never feel their chests constrict and panic. There is no vengeance for a nation that will murder children. There is no vigil, no paraffin wax burned to collar of paper plates and fingers, no taking of knees and grief or the pinning of carnations to television's litany of obituaries. In every outcome of the story, and I repeat, in every outcome of the story, Eleanor Bumper celebrates her 102nd birthday with her family in her unevicted apartment. Inside the sleeve of her birthday card is a check for $98.65. O'Shea Sibley does not stop dancing to Beyonce. We say our names because we live. Okay, I'm going to be reading the poem that was featured in Rhino on page 146. So if you have a copy, you can follow along. Ode to a Cowboy Who Never Shot a Gun. How to Be a Black Cowboy, Part 5, for Jalen Walker. What I am trying to tell you is that a cowboy is a current in search of its own source. You stomp and I scatter. My snake bite is false of venom, and I promise I mean no harm, but am terrified of everything. Burning the back road of my mouth to sundown towns, I flinch, silk moths quartered by windshield. And what coils become of my hands when I shoot whiskey neat to come down after being in a room full of white folks. Each time I become a new thing of liquid, a black river to be forded, swelling bathroom floors, wastebaskets to bedrooms in which I bet how a man like me is always capable of losing more. Quick to holster, I always seem to say or do the wrong things. My shit talk is a herd of grimaces, as in what twister will take out spring, what troubles next, ticks or outlaws in uniform, burrowing Texas fever into crude oil-dipped hides. As in, what is a wager between lack of law and desperation? And sometimes I believe rightly that y'all love me better as violence. My myth better off dead than alive. What I'm here to tell you is that I was not trying to hurt anyone, like my mama who baptized me more than once. My mass of hair welted like a perch across the lip of her bathtub. I heard through the elm switches of her prayer. She was willing to drown me before I one day died on account of anyone else. And you see, this mouth you have mistaken as a gun is just water trying to find its own place. But I never loaded that gun, much less shot it. What I'm trying to say is that night, my fear surged like bullets of rushing water, the kind that thins banks, ruins basements, wills your hands to retrieve all that hate you thought you had drowned in a floodplain. Listen, the gun in the back seat was the mirage, the rising river, and my mouth was full of blanks. I was a cowboy in search of my own running. Sorry, do I have time to read one more poem?
While I'd love to say yes.
Okay. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. And thank you for listening.
Jasmine, I hope you'll let us know when your collection is ready, and we'll share the news for not only the folks in this room, but for everyone who reads Rhino. They should know it's coming.
Thank you, Jasmine. What a way to start. I feel like electrified right now.
Yeah, that was fantastic. Our next reader is Emily Okamoto-Green, who serves as the writer in residence for the Visual Arts Center of Richmond, Virginia, where she's joining us from today. Of the two high bun poems we accepted for Rhino 2023, one editor writes, "Their images speak to each other in powerful and interesting ways." So you want to check that out. Emily is on pages 117 and 118 in this year's Rhino. So I say, welcome, Emily.
Hi, everyone. I just want to say, Jasmine, that was absolutely incredible. And to Jan and Virginia and Nile for putting this together, thank you so much. It's incredible that I can be on my couch in my living room in Richmond, Virginia, and still sharing so much amazing poetry and hearing so much amazing poetry. I just wanted to start by saying that, of course, Richmond is located on the lands of the Monacan and Powhatan and Nottoway nations. And I've spent quite a lot of my life in Richmond, or just south of it. But I was born in Japan, and most of my collection really deals with, or the collection I'm working on, I should say. I always say my collection like it's out, and then people ask me about it, and I'm like, oh, no, this is in my brain. It's still very much cooking. But I'd like to start off my reading with a poem that's not my own, if that's possible, but it's a poem that informs so much of my work. And it's a poem by Ononokomachi, who is a female poet writing in about 900 to 1000 AD. So I'll read it in ancient Japanese first, so forgive my pronunciation, and then I'll go into Larry Hammer's amazing translation. But Kagiri naki, omoi no mama ni, yoru mo okomu, yumeiji o sai ni, hito wa tou ga meiji. Guided by the flames of longing without limits, I shall come at night, for at least no one censures, traveling the path of dreams. So where do I start? I guess my collection really deals quite heavily in dream, because I find that dream is really the only way I can return to my homeland. I haven't been to Japan in over a decade, and even then, the Japan that I know, or the Japan of my childhood, gets farther and farther away and no longer exists, really. The Japan of my memories I can only access through dream. And a haibun is a Japanese form that was popularized by basho, which is characterized by a prose block, usually talking about a journey, and then concluded by a haiku. And all of my haibun that I'll be reading today and that are in my collection are really journeys through my dreamscapes, or dreamscapes that I've written for my family members, specifically my mother and grandmother. So I will start my own poetry with my poem that is in Rhino, and it's called Something Swims Lazily Upstream. Something swims lazily upstream in the cephalic vein of my left arm. A foreign body traces aimless circles like the finger of a distracted lover, but from the inside. I can't stand the surprise of learning my body is more hospitable than I thought. I press my finger to the knot still swimming along my ulna. It darts deeper into the muscle. The skin surrounding it opens like the flaps of a tent. I find the culprit, a silver disc of a fish peering out from a kind of anemone in my arm. I grasp it, pull it from my flesh like a splinter. In the open air, the spines on its back unfurl like sensu, like the tail feathers of a songbird. But something has the other end of the fish, a whitish tentacle pinpricked in an undulating blue. I pull and expose the orb of the firefly squid's eye, a new moon suspended among phosphorescent stars. If there's any family resemblance, I can't tell. The squid spits its watery dark, escapes back into my depths. Hotaruika, of your constellation's light, I've seen but inklings. And my second haibun is not found in Rhino, but it is a dream for my mother. So in the 1960s and 70s, when she was growing up in Japan, there was a big push by the government to instill more fat in the Japanese children's diet. They looked around at other nations and they were like, that's what we're missing, fat. We need to feed them fat. And of course, the easiest way to get fat in Japan is through whale meat. And there was a nationwide program that was instilled in the 60s and 70s to have a whale meat day, once a week. My mother absolutely hated whale meat day. And this is a dream for her. In line for lunch on whale meat day. Mother, your sailor uniformed shoulders slump your discontent. It's not smell so much as texture. What makes you suffer these slices of flesh tough enough to tire your tiny jaws? It's not so much love as a sense of duty. You will teach me this lesson in other classrooms. You get your tiny metal tray of white rolls and whale. This could go one of two ways. You could picket the bread around the muscle, take the extra care chopsticks allow to ensure you get no piece too soggy with fat. When the bell rings for lunch to end, you make your way single file back to the lunchroom to deposit empty trays. But your tray won't be empty. But it must be emptied. You scrape the fresh meat gone cold again into the trash. The chunks, livid at the thought of this second death, at the waist their whole become again the beast they were, their cells recleaving until sinews and fibers rewire into a face that looks you in the eye. In life, this meat was warm in deeper oceans than this. The looks of disappointment on the lunch ladies' faces, your heart would give out. You'd die. Or you could ensure your survival, make your jaw stronger. You could chew and you could swallow. You could wash everything down with the contents of a metal tea canister packed from home. You could go home early even, slip out the school gates like an eel from a trap. You hate cleaning the pool before summer vacation. Who would miss you? And yet, this is what happens. The hand holding your chopsticks brings a chunk to your dark eyes for inspection. By the look of the cut, the meat is from the belly of the beast. Your teeth and tongue muster their courage. You bite, it bursts. A silvery caviar spills from your mouth and forms a pool like sea foam around you. You're immersed in saltwater pearls or bubbles of mercury. The cafeteria fills. A ringing. Lunch is over. You and the other girls scrub an emptiness on Lake Hamana's bottom. All right. So that was for you, Mom. And thank you for just turning to me in the car one day and saying, I always hated Whale Meat Day. My mom drops little smidgens of information that way. And I always love to listen when she just turns and says something to me. Always listening to my mom and my grandma. And speaking of my grandmother, my last poem for Rhino today is in Rhino. And it's the poem that I feel really concludes my entire collection. And it's about my grandmother. So this is, I am in an airport. I am here. 4 days early, so as not to miss my flight. I say endless teary goodbyes to my relatives at the gate. My grandmother stands uncrying, stalwart. Instead of a hug, she hands me a pan-seared salmon she has salted and cooked earlier this morning. For the journey home, she assures me. But I protest. It won't fit. There's no space left with all my knickknacks. Too many souvenirs, I say. And yet I have so little to remember you by already. She takes my backpack from my shoulders, opens it. A rolling puff of steam escapes from the bag's zippered maw. Now you've done it, I say. The mound of rice nestled so neatly inside looks almost like a brain. My grandmother, unbothered, places the salmon in the space above the corpus callosum. The fish's eyes stay open long after the bag is shut. Goodbye, lonely flight. My mind, tiny plastic cup, too small for its thirst. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Rhino. And I can't wait to hear all the amazing readers we have in store.
Thank you, Emily. Yo, that was such a tender offering of pieces that just incorporate family and lineage and salmon. Come through, salmon. I'm allergic to salmon and
My
seafood.
grandma does make a mean salmon. That's me very, very, very strongly.
I believe it. I love to see it. I love the earrings, by the way, too. So let's keep it moving. Next up, we have Constance Hansen. And Constance is the assistant managing editor of Poetry Northwest. Constance lives with her family in Seattle, where she teaches poetry at the Hugo House and serves, I already said, managing editor of Poetry Northwest. And what I liked about this poem, what stuck out to me the most is the repetition. The poem Annunciation that is on page 2064 of our issue. And the repetition of the piece establishes like a rhythm for the poem to unfold and expand, along with showing how connecting different functions and entities of our world can be extremely illuminating, but does so in such concise language. And one of the things about this poem that stood out to me is the repetition of wilderness. And I just graduated from undergrad 2 years ago during a pandemic, and I feel like that's very much like entering a wilderness. So when we were talking about entering a wilderness, I was like, I'm with you, Constance, I'm with you. So please give it up for Constance Hansen.
Thank you so much for that nice intro. This whole experience with Rhino's been really dreamy and fabulous for me. I just feel so supported and encouraged in my work. And especially that this is a poem that you've chosen to show so much love, because it's the first poem in my manuscript, my very incomplete and unpublished manuscript. So I'll read this one first, and then last I'll read a very different Annunciation poem that is the last poem in the manuscript. And I didn't select the other poems I thought I would. I have a lot about women in religion and like childbirth and caregiving. I thought that would all go with it, but it was recently the 4th anniversary of my dad's death. And so I have a couple kind of elegies for him I wanted to read. But I'm in an earnest mood. So I'll just say too, I think for me, I'm really interested. There's a lot of birth and death in my work, and I'm really interested in how they come together and how they're both like moments where you encounter the more than material world, in my experience and opinion anyway. Yeah, and then I have I'm kind of like the daughter of a scientist and granddaughter of a pastor who like has their modes in mind, but I'm also creating my own sort of poetical, magical mode. So that's in there too. So I'll just start with Enunciation. You are entering a wilderness where virginity is subject to rough inquiry. You are entering a wilderness where matter is subject to dark matter. You are entering a wilderness where palette is subject to symbolism. You are entering a wilderness where breast is subject to tenderness. You are entering a wilderness where hunger is subject to nausea. You are entering a wilderness where nausea is subject to hunger. You are entering a wilderness where void is subject to placenta. You are entering a wilderness where complexion is subject to underpainting. You are entering a wilderness where continence is subject to laughter. You are entering a wilderness where sleep is subject to heartburn. You are entering a wilderness where bed rest is subject to senses. You are entering a wilderness where pain is subject to wave. You are entering a wilderness where push is subject to give. You are entering a wilderness where predators are subject to screams. You are entering a wilderness where stars are subject to afterbirth. You are entering a wilderness where cries are subject to colostrum. You are entering a wilderness where milk is subject to mules. You are entering a wilderness where nipples are subject to suppuration. You are entering a wilderness where eyes are subject to chisels. You are entering a wilderness where tenderness is subject to teeth. You are entering a wilderness where spring is subject to grief. You are entering a wilderness where debt is subject to blood. You are entering a wilderness where death is subject to bread. You are entering a wilderness where stained glass is subject to sunset. You are entering a wilderness where scapula is subject to acid rain. You are entering a wilderness where syllables are subject to aria. You are entering a wilderness where violence is subject to syllables. You are entering a wilderness where countenance is subject to resin. You are entering a wilderness where resin is subject to time. You are entering a wilderness where location is subject to prayers for intercession. You are entering a wilderness where importance is subject to interpretation. You are entering a wilderness. Cover your hair. I sort of put myself in a trance reading that. Okay. Back to earth. Sorry, I have now to find my document. There we go. Okay, calling fields. Field of vision, field of snow blindness. In what gift shop did I fall in love with that bell? She was cold. She was copper green. The balls of my fingers were silver in their sockets and buzzed against her raised language. In what country did we meet? There were woods, firs, shadowless iron sculptures, a hill that thrust a manse-turned museum up, ships, like the whole intact ribs of Leviathan strung from unlikely, lordly ceilings, and an aura of ammonia, ships the size of my thumbnail for sale in wired glass counters. Souvenir, to remember my ancestors, followers of fathers and star followers, counters upon a barn, the muffled vibrato of sheep bleating on the other side of a hill, their fallow waiting, noiseless as the turning of a worm. The uncritical patience of faith waiting, burrowed bones on harvest waiting while their inward kingdom sleeps. Once in a while, the clean call of a small bell. So here's a couple elegies for my father, who was a hematologist. Poem is called Hematologist for my father. Fugitive from inevitabilities, you were granted sanctuary in the storied laboratory with your name on the door. Savor of lives, looking for his in the shoebox where HLA types first kissed on index cards. When the hounds finally found you, you made them heel for a milk bone and let the centrifuges finish their astonishing physics before you locked up for the night and turned yourself in to the undertaker. Artist statement. They kind of go together. My aim is simple, to continue my father's work, wherein one perfect stranger offers their very marrow to another. Maudlin, I know. In the chest, there's an organ recital in a little white church in the middle of nothing but snow and farms where the animals in their barns don't not believe in miracles. Enunciation. You made it through the book. The houndsman blows his black horn to the new Madonna, whose spidery fingers clutch a claw. To the right of the crier, two hounds bray, one brown, one gray, two watchers at the gate in another frame, that of mind, twin pillars named knowledge and acknowledgement. The latter standing for a word that's hard to rhyme with in a hymn, perhaps with wraith, or saith if you say it fast, as in saith you faith, you wraith. In the fastening of earth to heaven, we had casualties and surprise survivors, namely virginity, an inkling volta here in the art of the Spanish forger. Our kneeling leading man neither steals nor stabs, but merely announces, punctually enunciates. That is to say, he does not lay claims so much as make them. Blowing his horn a little bit louder, a little bit worse. Who is he beneath his red dogger's cloak? The doggerel robes of an angel reveal the sugar wax chest of Gabriel. Gabriel has come to say, this be the one, this be the one. Maria, thou art pronounced vassal of the king mustard seed. The unicorn's maiden in a particularly steely blue, fingers a silver mane of fact or theorem, all is horse breath and the gloss of Winteltrap shell growing from his forehead. A fragile calcium cruciform winds away from its root and points accusingly upwards. Something from the sky wants in. Thank you.
Thank you, Constance. Thank you. Ooh.
Thank you, Constance. There's so much music in your poetry. So many lines that call back to each other. I really enjoyed that reading. Thank you.
Thank you.
In movies, there are always flowers. Begins the heartbreaking 21 Weeks by Kate Gaskin, one of two poems we selected from her Founders Prize submission. And one of the most difficult things about our process is that, as you probably all know, every submission is read by multiple people, editors, readers, and then every poem that makes it into the book is discussed at the table. And so often we get poems with difficult subjects, but that's, you know, the emotionality of a subject is not enough. There has to also be craft and image and true poetry in that work. And I think you'll see that in Kate's work, that it is heartbreaking but beautiful as well. Kate's the author of Forever War from Yes, Yes Books. She's a PhD candidate and a writing instructor at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. So live today from Alabama, joining us is Kate Gaskin.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to share some of poems with everyone today. I'm going to read 3 poems, 2 that I was so fortunate to get to publish in Rhino, a journal I have long admired. All 3 of them have to do with something really terrible, unfortunately, that happened to me. I had an unintended pregnancy at the very beginning of the pandemic in 2020. I had a copper IUD that failed, which is very unusual. It's a very small percentage, less than 1% of people that it happens to. And then with that pregnancy, I got about exactly halfway through, and then I went into early labor. It was just right before doctors could do anything for me. So the first poem I'm going to read is a pantom. So you'll hear a lot of repeating through the poem. All right, it's called 21 Weeks. In movies, there are always flowers in the hospital room, but mine was bare. I had been there 4 days and was just beginning to hope I could keep her. In the hospital room, I was cold and bare and still bleeding big crimson clots, though I was beginning to hope I could keep her. By then, I wanted something other than to be bleeding big crimson clots so red they were almost purple. And by then, I also wanted something other than hospital food, so my husband ordered beef ragu so red it was almost purple from a restaurant nearby. It was better than hospital food, this beef ragu with a salad of microgreens and peppadews from a restaurant nearby. It was better, though I picked at it, sitting on my bed, holding a salad of microgreens and peppadews with an IV taped to my hand as I picked at it, sitting on my bed. In the morning, the doctors told me to go home and remove the IV from my hand. I was stable, they said, no longer in danger that morning, so they told me to go home. But there is someone in danger, I said, though I was stable and no longer in danger of dying. But someone here could still die, I said. There is someone in danger, I said, but they sent me home. It was too early to save her from dying. But someone here could still die, I said, though I was not yet 2 patients, I was 1. So they sent me home. It was too early to save her. So I climbed the steps to my bedroom. I wasn't 2 patients yet. I was just 1. I knew I couldn't do anything to save her as I climbed the steps to my bedroom. I wasn't aware that that was the last day I would be with her. I knew I couldn't do anything to save her. Afterward, I was alone without her, and I was aware that that was the last day I would ever be with her. Afterward, I was alone without her, and by then, there were plenty of flowers. And I had another baby about a year ago, and he's screaming in the background because my mom is feeding him, and he likes to scream when he eats. So hopefully that's not too loud and distracting. Okay, the next poem is a poem on the wrong side of statistics. When this accidental pregnancy happened to me with the IUD, it just blew my mind open because it was such a kind of a freak thing to happen. 8 years, thin copper, penny bright, and hidden in deep red. Once a doctor told me he couldn't see the strings. I, a good girl, all these years, and perfect birth control. The ultrasound showed it tucked in its gray box, little white T. I never didn't practice. Sex like a textbook description of. That's safe. I was that safe. The product pamphlet says 10 years, and on the 8th. Is it an urban legend? The one about the baby born clutching an IUD. in its chubby hand. Statistically, it was less than a 1% chance what happened to me when she began, a baby. And I, so careful, so responsible, the doctor said. It probably wasn't the IUD that caused it. The doctor said it was probably the IUD that caused the labor before she could, before she was, before. Afterward, it was like I didn't have her. Though I had had her, she was never. She was 2 pieces of paper. Eventually it fell into the toilet, swift bloom of blood, copper wire. And then one last poem tonight, multiverse with boy bands and roses. Sometimes I like to imagine another life, one in which the daughter I lost at birth is 13 now and leaning away from me suddenly into a future of lip gloss and friends and chat rooms. And did I mention it's still the 90s there and this other dimension, this other timeline perforated at the edge of technology before it explodes 20 years from now. But for now, she is spritzing body spray. She is popping strawberry gum. She has the best news to tell her best friend about a boy she met in a chat room for people who love boy bands. And while they talk, they listen to Side Street Boys sing Fate of My Heart on the pink boombox she got for Christmas, and neither of them will have flesh and blood, non-pixelated boyfriends for years. But until then, there's debate and dance and music and her dad's new speedboat on sunny days, wind in her hair, lake spray on her face, and the bracingly cold delight of bobbing in the deepest parts of the dammed river, while over on Chimney Rock, another boy jumps from 50 feet. And this time he hits the water just right, doesn't sever his spinal cord, doesn't surface face down and limp and motionless. His friends yelling at him to stop teasing. No, the water is safe today. And the boy grows up to become an orthodontist who on weekends plays trumpet in the local jazz band. And now it's the golden hour of the afternoon, and my daughter is lying on a lounge chair among the French hydrangeas and coral knockouts her dad planted, and she's glowing. She's bronzed from head to toe, painting her toenails, humming a little tune that doesn't exist in this time or place, but is a big hit where she lives unbothered by the accident of her conception, and another timeline where I, her mother, am staring with dismay at the test in my hands, and then months later, holding her small, still body, a baby who will never be anything but stardust or atomized matter, glittering in the unreachable expanse between where I am here and where she is there, literally breath and blood and beauty in the bright light that saturates her dad's garden, listening to a song that somehow all of us know by heart. Thank you very much.
Wow. Thank you, Kate. Thank you, Kate. Can we give it up first of all for our first half of this reading? Like, excellent.
Yes.
So much. Thank you so much. Kate, your pieces make me think a lot about how like poetry can be such a tool to make something out of the marvel, and out of the madness, and out of the confusion, and out of what is like captivating and like just bewildering about this world, and to make something and to hold something and to like hold yourself in it. So thank you. We are going to slide right into our second half, and to kick that off we have Doug Ramspeck, and Doug is the author of nine collections of poetry. 9.
Not
And
none, 9. I like that, Nile.
9 of those, a collection of short stories and a novella. And Doug has numerous honors, but the part of his bio that intrigued me the most was Married to Beth's son Ramspeck, a Victorianist and Harry Potter scholar. Shout out to the Harry Potter scholars in the room. Go crazy. We love to see it. Ramspeck is a retired professor of English from the Ohio State University and lives in Black Mountain, North Carolina. And with Doug's poem that's on page 132 of our issue, I was really intrigued by the sharp and like uncanny imagery in the piece and how the poem talks about family and connection, and especially like towards the end talks about the brother. And I have 3 brothers, so I was very like connected to that image in the piece, and I know that you all will be too. So give it up for Doug Ramspeck, everybody.
Well, thank you very much for the introduction and for publishing the poem in this issue of Rhino. I have here, the poem is called Catechism of the Skull, so I thought I would show you a possum skull that actually is up on my bookshelf. My daughter, a couple decades ago, found a possum skull back in our woods. She dug it up, washed it off with a hose, and I have since that time written way too many poems and short stories that have possum skulls in them. It seems like some kind of a obsession I should get treatment for, but it just seems as though again and again I write about possum skulls. And so this poem that, in Rhino is entitled Catechism of the Skull. Well, I should explain, by the way, that the skull I showed you is not the skull that my daughter found. A dog ran off with that, we think, because it was missing from the, so with this one, actually, where you really should find all possum skulls was on eBay. So the title of the poem is Catechism of the Skull. I have been thinking about these sidelong glances toward the abyss that wake us in the night while crickets claim dominion. And it seems that the bucket of the world is forever full, and nothing is more dreamlike than a shard of moon buried in the sky's mud outside a bedroom window. And in these ebb tides of sleep, there is only sensibility and quiet questions. And we live in our original bodies, like the skull I keep atop my bookshelf, a possum skull that waddled once with its pale moon face and its 50 teeth and its prehensile tail that gripped the living world. My mother took me as a child to Mississippi to visit her younger sister who was dying of breast cancer and who wore a wool sweater in the dense heat. And we stood one evening before a placid Gulf of Mexico that seemed a sleepy and forgetful gray god. And 2 decades later, my mother's own diagnosis made those intervening years seem like the hinge of bat wings fluttering erratically above the lawn at night when my brother and I were kids, and we would toss tennis balls into the air to see if they would chase them. Next poem I want to read is from my latest collection, Blur, published by the WordWorks. So thank you to them for publishing it. And the title of the poem is Dream of the 10 Rivers. The boys summon vultures like bedclothes, wear them in their sleep, wear them to wade into the dark current of the night. And so their father unfolds his wings inside their dreams, and a wreckage of darkness gathers with a heatless fire until the brothers exist almost wholly inside wariness, inside boy smells, and they acquiesce to the dreamed hand lashing toward them, to the caress of piss, to the blood taste in the mouth, and the story they tell is of wildfire, of 10 rivers, the water spreading outward like fingers on hands, rivers of numerology. Or they tell the story of the blind prophet who sees only that there's no way out, that the years are waxen ghosts. Or they sit with their father at the kitchen table, sit with their father on the porch, sit with their father in his truck until sitting becomes a kind of prayer, until the silence of their voices is a kind of prayer. And the vultures draw the pink entrails from the carcasses, conjure perfect strings of them, strings to tie around fingers in remembrance. And the brothers want to swim with their father in the current, to be their father in the current, and also to be the vultures with their shaved heads. And when it snows in winter, the brothers will skate the 10 rivers with sharp blades, blades that draw blood from the ice, and their father will come to them in their dreams, will crack the surface with heavy boots, will whisper comfort as he holds them fast beneath. And then finally from that same book, Music of the Orchard. As a boy, I would see them sometimes carrying blankets through the orchard, walking through our yard toward the river, and I would imagine that the dusk light was a hand touching the braille of the treetops, the living grass. And I was old enough to imagine that the way bees swarmed around fallen globes of fruit was the way the lovers joined their bodies along the bank. My father told me once that mud was the only prayer that mattered, that our lives were made of it, and the lovers, I imagined, dreamed that the black hair of the sky was a kind of ladder, but the moonlight was a ladder too, and the dirt beneath their moving bodies was a prophet. In winter, I knew I would hear the music of the wind whipping across the snow amid the trees, wailing through window jambs. But in summer, I watched the distant birds sewing the needles of their wings into the clouds, studied the wildflowers growing along the river, where the lovers lay down in darkness, the words they whispered close against an ear, like the sounds of water over stone. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug.
Thank you, Doug. That was terrific. Doug is a longtime member of the Rhino community, and we were really pleased to have you in the book this year, Doug. Thank you. So Illinois poet Whitney Jones is the author of The Old Works from the Heartland Review Press. Rhino editors found her work to be deeply affecting and beautifully crafted, offering unusual observations of the exterior world whilst the interior world is convincingly delivered. The poem that appears in this year's Rhino, for me, it's almost like a mini chapbook. It's almost like 5 poems that are separate, but that somehow all work together into this larger universe of a poem. And I hope she'll be reading that for us now. So Whitney, welcome.
Thank you guys. And thank you so much to all the editors. I wanted to be in Rhino for quite a while, so I was delighted when you guys selected my poem, especially this one. It's super important to me as far as my new collection goes. It's pretty long, so I'll try to preface it quickly, but I lost my daughter to cancer in 2020. And so I've been kind of working on a book about her and what we went through and, you know, even life after. So I've got just 2 poems to read today about that, and I'll just go ahead and get started. International PPB Dicer 1 Registry Quality of Life Survey. 1. It is hard for me to keep my attention on things. It's second summer, but false fall lasted 3 days, and for 3 days I saw her in the early fallen leaves I fed to the goats. They work through them quickly, pulling with their lips and teeth, occasionally dropping their heads to prod one another away from the best selection. They operate with a single-mindedness, one leaf, then the next, then the next, then the hem of my shorts or my ponytail when I'm crouched for them to reach. A hard tug to say, is that all? 2, I have trouble remembering what I was just thinking. The chickens have started bedding down in her playhouse. They've kicked and shuffled dirt to nest themselves into small, warm bowls of earth. The mailbox sticker is peeling loose around the slot where, as a toddler, she crammed her fingers through, shrieking when I caught them on the other side. Paper wasps have started to hive in the roof. It's the foundress who picks the place to nest, spills eggs, and builds the home. But the season's coming for the mated females to find somewhere else to overwinter. The living are always on the move. 3. It is hard for me to remember what I just heard. The geese are leaving early this year in large flocks, abandoning even the abundance exposed from the drained lake. Some V's are only half formed in their urgency. The farmers say it means winter is coming hard and harsh, but the woolly worms I've seen have had only modest coats, and the heat feels as if it could go on forever. It brought one last hibiscus bloom from the bush next to our sidewalk. I would press it for her. She always collected the last one for a vase in the house, but their process is so much more complex than other flowers. Something like upside down first in a jar of rice or marbles, and even then it may not hold its composure. 4. I have trouble remembering more than one thing at a time. I have to dig the gnomes out of the overgrown flower bed before the cold sets in. I feel I should care for them, shelter them from winter damage. I've lost several to rainwater freezing in their crevices and pushing their pieces apart. You have to part the nutsedge and knotweed, but it's the creeping bentgrass wrapped around their bases holding fast. I'm tired of being made to do things. I grab hold of the gnome by his chipped away beard and faded hat and yank until finally the weeds deliver him. I don't remember when he lost his garden hoe, but his hands offer nothing up to me. He smiles under the wear. It takes time to find the rest. Many are dirt deep, worn into the ground. Worms come up with them, and a few chickens join me in the bed for a buffet of the bugs that prefer the damp, dark earth. They're happy when I do all the work. 5. Are you concerned that something bad is going to happen to you? The ducks are new and shy away from me. The last of their baby yellow fluff quaffs the back of their heads. You can see just the tip of the meat of their wings still. Once the feathers come in, we'll clip the edges against their leaving. We raised them in a plastic tote in our mudroom. They'd hardly survive without us. They wait until the gate closes behind me before attacking their feed with the abandon of those still young, losing half as much to the ground as their mouth. Scooping, they toss back their beaks, hungry, the same way she used to eat sweet corn, by the fistfuls. Same as them, she'd run off when she was done, a clutch of kernels still squished against her palms, so that I would have to corner her to clean her. A damp cloth rubbing pink into her cheeks, tucking between each finger, then the flat of her hands. Once they were slick enough to slip from mine, they would. And then my second and last poem is called Lost Mom. After my daughter died, I looked for her life anywhere it could have been hiding. Chocolate coins at the bottom of my flower vase, a piggy bank tucked into the movie cabinet. I still find iridescent heart-shaped confetti in the carpet, caught along the baseboards from my long ago surprise toy. Her socks are under the coffee table, a squishy toy behind the cedar chest, her baby doll laid to rest in a washcloth in the laundry basket. There's a juice bottle I find in our car under the back seat. The top is a cartoon pony. Sparklefly or Rainbow Mint, I can't remember what she named it. Do we leave the treehouse outside, the Power Wheels princess carriage, the pile of pretty rocks she collected on the sidewalk? I still look for them. I spent the week after her death digging in the gravel of our driveway for a glint until my fingertips turned red and throbbed. I made a broken quartz monument next to our pond where we walked. I want to believe in the magic she saw in the rocks she gathered in her pockets, that somehow it can call her back to me. No one warns you about the shrine you're building to live in when they're gone. How hard it is to keep going on when your house and car and yard and heart are waiting for them to pick up wherever it was that their body stopped. And that's it. Thank you, guys.
Wow, thank you, Whitney. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I felt your whole heart in that. And I really love like the detail in those pieces and like and how you really like took us into these spaces that you were inhabiting with her, and the cadence of your reading too was just very smooth and just very like tranquil. Thank you.
Gorgeous. Thank you, Whitney.
So next up we have Lucy Zhang, and Lucy actually has the final poem in Rhino 2023 on page 170, the very last poem. And Lucy Zhang is the author of the chapbooks Hollowed and Absorption, and her work is anthologized in Best Microfiction, Best Small Fictions, Best of the Net, and the Wigleaf Top 50. And the poem in our issue that's called I'm Worried Dad Will Only Remember That Humans Suck. And it was just such a good title that I felt like I had to read it, but like y'all gonna hear it again. But I really appreciate how this poem like touches on religion and familiar relationship with the father specifically, and what it means to learn to live and learn to love when you know that the life that you knew will never be the same again. I felt like that was really exemplified in this poem. And I'm excited to bring Lucy to the table for y'all to feel it. So, Lucy Zhang, everyone.
Thanks so much for the intro, Nile. Thanks all the Rhino editors and previous readers. Those were lovely readings. So the first poem I'll be reading is I'm Worried Dad Will Only Remember That Humans Suck from Rhino. The first time I saw Buddha's hand, I shrieked and stood behind my dad as he cut off the rind, snapped one of the thin fingers off. He handed it to me. I shook my head, wary about eating fruit appendages that look like they're in prayer. Surely biting one was bad luck, a harbinger of death and despair. Dad insisted it was good for me because it had a bitter white pith. Everyone knew anything bitter was a cure to all illness. But I continued to shake my head. He was never one to force me to act against my will. No, he was much sneakier about it. He'd tell me about how swarms of locusts crossed the ocean, replenishing energy by devouring each other while in flight, how I'd gape and ask why locusts were so cruel. He'd say all animals are like that, even humans. Suddenly eating the finger of Buddha's hand didn't seem like such a big deal. Doubt humanity before believing in it, he'd lecture. Dad doesn't remember things too well anymore. Still thinks I'm 12, even though I pay a mortgage, file taxes, suffer back cramps. I live close to work and stay late because they provide free food after 7 p.m., working late dinner program, and walk back home along a path lit by traffic lights and neglected lampposts. Dad always insisted I'd be on the phone with him if I was walking home alone. But he has stopped picking up the calls because middle school ended at 3 p.m., so he thinks I'm already at home, tucked in, with a cup of sunlight on my bedstand to help my growing bones. Instead, I walk home in silence, trying to stay alert even as my mind drifts toward the locusts who once blocked out the sun for 5 days, then went extinct. And the second poem I'll be reading is Crash, that was originally published in Arcana. You should only ever buy an SUV, so you'll likely be in the car that fares slightly better in a crash. Lagon says, like he knows we're going to crash into a sedan, or more accurately, I'm going to crash into a sedan, or a building, or a bridge, blown up with airbags puffed like deep fried prawn chips, drenched in gasoline, and trailing smoke so dense you can't even find my remains in the ash. Not a limb or a strand of hair to dress in Shelwian and send off to the afterlife like a goddess wrapped in white, a cocoon tightly layered so not a single prayer can penetrate. A bundle from which spills death instead of a butterfly. Though they fly so slowly, you can snatch them with 2 fingers if you're careful and possess the hand-eye coordination like I do on the road. Enough to forego the knobs and whistles of blind spot detection and driver assist because this isn't China. Everyone yields to pedestrians like they're kings, and what king bows to a monster whose mouth stretches wide as a grill, toothy and greedy to suck up the sea? Thank you.
Thank you, Lucy. You know, we can't determine the order of the poems because we stick with our alphabetical by last name convention, but I love the poem that Rhino ends with. I think it's a wonderful way to close the collection, and we're so glad you sent it to Rhino. So thank you, Lucy.
Thank you, Lucy.
I can't believe I'm saying that this is our last reader, our final reader. The reading has been wonderful and has gone so quickly for me with such a variety of voices. But here we are. So please listen intently, as this is going to be our final reader of the evening. Editors loved the music and movement in the poetry of our next reader, Khalisa Ray. Personally, I love how it's so powerful and unexpected, and yet its power is tempered with a confidence that really comes through in the words. I'm very much looking forward to hearing it read out loud. Khalisa is an award-winning North Carolina poet and journalist, and her debut collection, Ghosts in a Black Girl's Throat, was published by Red Hen Press. We are pleased to present Khalisa. Thank you.
Hello, hello. Oh my goodness, this has been amazing. Absolutely amazing. We have had skulls, we have had screaming kids while eating, which I also scream while I eat. So I just want to say ashe to your kid, Kate. This has been amazing. Thank you, Jan. Thank you, Nile. Thank you, Virginia, for having all of us. This has been such a beautiful experience. I will echo whoever said, which one of my colleagues said that this is basically a dream publication to be in Rhino. So thank you so much for making this dream come true for all of us. So I'm going to not start with my Rhino poem, but my Rhino poem can be found in Ghost in a Black Girl's Throat, which is my debut collection. I will be starting, like many others, with a poem from a, seems like we got a lot of collections in progress. So I have my forthcoming collection, which I say forthcoming, but I don't know when it's coming out, like someone said, you know. So we're like, you know, holding out hope. It's called Unlearning Eden, and it's all about a young queer Black girl in the South. I've been writing a lot about queerness and religion and the South. And so I'm going to start with that. I do want to honor this land. If you know, I'm in Durham, North Carolina, and we sit on the land of the Onanichi and the Eno people. And so I did want to honor that before I get started. I think I'm going to start with one of my favorite poems from Unlearning Eden that is published in a couple of other locations, but it's called Catching Bees for the Broken. And I hope this provides a balm for all of our hearts, because we've talked about some very tender subjects tonight. Catching Bees for the Broken, after Gerald Stern. Today, I put my plans on hold to mine the honey bubbling under my lips, scrape what's left from my thighs and mold a balm for when I want to feel whole. Sweet sticky in all the hurt places, sealing where a woman was made a wound. There gaping with sap and sugar, I smear layers over cracks my mouth, glazing a brulee of come hither. Today, I need to not spread in both directions, but to be held together by amber. Today, I will draw the queen bee to my hive and bury her into my openings. In helix, I ribbon and caramelize into uneatable candy. Safe is to be wrapped in a swarm of invisible, to be set in a trap of syrup. Today, I am embalmed, thick spiced and golden. Hurry, let me harden again. I want to transition. Jan said something. People often tell me that my poems should always be read out loud. So it's just a privilege to be able to read with y'all. As y'all know, I do spoken word and slam as almost like a side living. So it's always just a pleasure to like share space with folks and hear folks read out loud, because I think that that's transformative. Next, I'm going to read my poem from Electric Lit, which is There Is No More Chocolate, Ice Cream, and Stars Hollow, or on getting help from my obsession with Gilmore Girls. I think of Lorelai's love of food and coffee and how white privilege is always finish bowl and feasting, consuming even the carton, never belly room enough for consequences. I love all the ways I'm forced to bask in white bodies embracing, expected to cream for two-ply paper lips, pressing together a net of hair knotting like dingy shoelaces. How she never thinks of her 50 flavored choices, a multitude of men pining for her seen and centered ass. Meanwhile, when you're a straight white woman, the love triangle is your sweet inheritance. Hand spun in Caucasian confection, everyone wants to dip their tongues into, pop rocks their taste buds on to Anglo fizz ecstasy, a froyo of vanilla brain freeze, while us queer Black women sit patient for our 4 lines, $50, and a SAG credit, waiting for sexual tension to build between her and diner boy. Meanwhile, I would have fucked him and fled, because I never know what's good for me, and even when I do, I leave. Was never taught how to stay frozen, cone gripped and candy-hearted, but you learned because you are everywhere. Snow White showed you a woman is only desirable when she is immovable and waiting to be carved into, while us brown girls never stick around long enough for you to lick the edges. We know we'll melt if we stay still. All right. We're going to move to my Rhino poem before I close on like a little ditty. So I'm gonna move over to my Rhino piece. What's funny about this poem is I didn't, you know how you have those poems where you don't know what's gonna happen of its original version, and then you edit it and folks are like, yeah, that might be the one. So I love the transformation that this poem has taken. It's called Circus Acts, No More Black Girl Magic, inspired by my mentor Mahogany Brown. And that this is Circus Acts, No More Black Girl Magic. Black woman, this world will make you circus, freak show, tightrope walker, contort your name from sorority to Sarah Bartman, Hotep Venus, stage performer. Look how they will abracadabra the royal exploitation of your form. Watch them dissect your broad bottom, saw you into science experiment, call your mending magic, your root balm and salve a work of the devil. Go out the trap door and come back in the body of Beyonce, prized possession. They will spit shine the stage for you again. What a spectacular woman, two-headed and omnipresent, 1 foot here, 1 foot in Houdini state. Your magic trick is look at all the wonder I can do with 2 hands in 24 hours. When they say that's black girl magic, say I have no magic. I make meals from crumbs, cast demons with just my tongue, envision possibility from potential, and that makes me scientist, inventor, chemist, spiritual being. Tell them this is not super, this is survival. when they hand you the cape anyway, call you hero, say haven't I carried enough? When they call your strength otherworldly, say it is the Venus rising within me and nothing more. I'm gonna leave y'all on this quick little short piece. I've been writing a lot about religion, girlhood. As you know, my book is all about the ghosts of the South that haunt us. And the next book is all about girlhood and the intersectionality of being a Black girl. This is Floodgates with Teeth. Mama told us to cross our legs in church, and I'm not sure what they thought would fly out. A bee, a psalm, a moan, wet-fanged beasts running to where we lost ourselves, where we first saw the light. Come where the dewdrops of mercy shine bright, shine all around us. A call that says I'm alive here when I'm gaped open, splayed like a fish platter. I'm sure whatever they thought would wash out would be a flood, a stampede, whatever Noah escaped from, that's what's between our legs. They boarded the ark to get away from our wet jaws. They afraid of our flood beasts, our water claws be so scary. Close it up and follow the elephants into the boat like good little girls. I notice church women wear cloths over their short skirts to not show their private parts to the pastor. And I wonder why a woman always the one plugging our holes, why men be the ones that get to be open, why we hiding the gush like men be wolves without control. And what if at night my vagina grew shark veins? That's why my mother says to close the feral flow. Who knows what will be foaming and rabbit-lipped when the preacher comes down from the pulpit. Thank y'all so very much. This was amazing.
Love that. Love your energy. Thank you, Khalisa.
Come on, ending with the shark fangs. A shark fang reading tonight.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I love it. Thank y'all so much for being here. We want to give it up for all of our readers. We're so grateful to have y'all around 2023. And thank you to our editors. Thank you to everybody supporting us. Please go make sure that y'all get yourselves a copy of Rhino 2023. And the link has been put in the chat. And like Jan mentioned earlier, you can go get you that free shipping if you use the purchase code virtual launch in all caps. And thank you to all of our sponsors. And this has been such a powerful and tender and vulnerable experience. And we are grateful to have y'all here and to share this with us. So thank you so much. Jan, you got anything else to add? Close us out.
I just echo everything Nile says. This has been a balm for the soul. Poetry gives us life. And I don't only want to thank our beautiful readers, but to everyone who came here to live the experience of hearing them read. Thank you all.
Thank y'all so much. We hope y'all have a wonderful evening. Please stay tuned with Rhino and so much love.